Call to order the regular City Council meeting for Monday, July 1st, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. This time I would like to request that if you have a cell phone, please put it on silent or put it on vibrate to limit interruptions. At this time, we'll move on to item number 1 on the agenda. That's the roll call.
Blessum.
Here.
Fuller.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner. Ross.
Here.
Samuelson.
Here. Item number 2 on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item number 3, which is the mayor's report. First off, I'd like to welcome our 3 new council members. I'm looking forward to a productive 4 years with this crew. So thank you, and thank you for your hard work, and congratulations, and welcome to the council. Just a few items on the mayor's report at this time. We, since the last meeting, we had change in commands up at the Minot Air Force Base. Several of them, but 2 that I attended were the main company, the wing commanders, swapped out. The 91st Missile Wing, we welcomed a new, well, he's not new to us, but he's new to the wing commander spot. That is Colonel Jimmy Slabaugh. Will be taking over for Kenny McGee, who is off to the Pentagon. And then the 5th Bomb Wing, we welcomed Colonel Jesse Lamoran. He comes to us from Barksdale Air Force Base, and he is replacing Colonel Dan Hoadley, who after 24 years in the Air Force has decided to retire and making his new home in the Minneapolis area. So congratulations, and hopefully soon I will get the wing commanders to come down and make a formal introduction to us here at the council. Other than that, we had some budget meetings. I also did a welcome for the North Dakota Chiefs of Police Association that was in town this last week. We had a Chamber of Commerce Workforce Committee. We welcomed a member of the Fargo Chamber of Commerce to talk about some opportunities that we could collaborate in. Also, Task Force 21 meetings. We had one-on-ones. I had one-on-ones with the incoming council members since our last meeting. And also over the weekend, I spoke at the 50th anniversary / 50th reunion of Magic City Campus and the 50th reunion of the class of 1974. It was finally nice to be the youngest one in the room there once. So anyway, so that concludes my report. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to item 4.1, City Manager's Report. Harold.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I would echo the mayor's sentiments. Welcome to the 3 new council members. Look forward to working with you in the future as we strive to make Minot the best we can and our organization a good organization for our employees. I guess first and foremost, I'd be happy to answer any questions, if there are any, with regards to the memo that's included in the packet.
Councilman Blessum.
All right, I've got a couple actually, Harold. Can we start with the wayfinding project? Can you give us an update on that? I know in your report it says Phase 1 substantially completed. Phase 2 right now is, that's the next step. So can you kind of give us an update on what that looks like and what that'll be?
Yeah, in 2023, we budgeted the money for Phase 1, which is the wayfinding signage that has populated throughout the community here recently. 2024, in our current year budget, the City Council budgeted $350,000 towards Phase 2, which included an upgrade of the community monument signs at the entrances of our community. It's not a complete replacement, it's just a rehab of those. Give a little bit more contrast, update the look of them so they're consistent. I think each one looks different depending on when it was built. And I think we're in the process of developing the RFP for that. I don't think it's been out for bid yet. And then Phase 3 was to be budgeted for in 2025, which we'll be discussing as part of our budget process coming up. I'll be addressing that as part of my city manager recommended budget. at the next council meeting. Yeah.
So does phase two come before us again, or is that going to just roll forward?
I would imagine that the amount is sufficient enough that, yes, we would be bringing that to council for action for award of bid
Okay.
when that's ready.
Yeah, and if I can continue, the only other one I was going to ask about then is just a similar update on Puppy Dog Coulee. I know that there was a substantial amount in the budget for this year, I think 17 million if I remember right, and just wondered if we had an update on that. And I know that that's also part of, Steph, I think part of your update as well is with Hotel Revel, and if it's appropriate to do that update together right now, that's fine.
I believe we have an agenda item here on the agenda later under consent with regards to an easement for that. So I don't know if maybe it'd be best to have Lance come up and address that now on questions and update on that. Basically, in essence, we have infrastructure that's failing, and we've been in the process of finishing up design and getting it ready for bid and construction, and then trying to get the appropriate easements and those kinds of things to do the work of the location of the infrastructure. And that's one of the agenda items tonight is one of those easement pieces, but I'll let Lance speak more eloquently and more detailed on that.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, city manager is correct. Right now, we are in final easement acquisitions, so we have several easements that the city has purchased. We have a few details that we're working out. One is on the agenda tonight. 90% plans have been submitted to our office for review, so we're working through the final design plans, estimates, specifications. Those are all coming into our office now. Once we have final easements in hand, the city will be in a position to publicly bid the project. So that would be our goal, is to get that on the street here yet this year if we can. Obtain public bids, and then, if possible, start some of the project yet this year, and then continue that into 2025, and probably put the finishing touches on the project in 2026.
Okay. Right. Yeah. And I think we can handle the rest of the legal when we get down to item 12, because we pulled that.
Okay. Any other questions for Harold on his city manager's report? Seeing none, we will move on to item 4.
I may, Mr.
Oh, I'm
Mayor.
sorry. Go ahead, Harold.
Before we move on, I did want to have Lance come back up to the podium here. We've had a lot of attention with regards to our 3rd Street Bridge, including some meetings with staff and conversations with the North Dakota Department of Transportation today, and I'd like Lance to give an update and what some of the potential public impacts will be.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Over the last couple days, we've been in contact with the DOT quite a bit. We've had some pictures that have been coming into the office regarding some of the concrete that's been shown in the paper and in other places that have come into our office. It appears some of that concrete on one of the piers has gotten worse over time. We have some concerns with the condition of that bridge. We sent those pictures on to the DOT. They have a bridge division full of bridge engineers, and the state has a bridge engineer. Obviously, they have a lot of bridges on their system, so we wanted to lean into their expertise and see if some of this stuff is as bad as it looks. They shared our concerns as well. Some of these spalls are getting pretty bad. However, we don't really have enough information at this time to know if we can reopen that bridge at this time. So our plan at this time is to keep the bridge closed. And we're recommending that we get some more information. DOT is going to send up one of their consultants, AECom, here in the next couple of weeks to do another bridge inspection and to determine what the load rating is on the bridge. And basically a load rating is how much weight can that pier support. And the goal of that is to help us determine what the next action steps are, whether we need to hire some folks to help us design some improvements, or if we can reopen. So I'm hoping here in the next few weeks we'll be able to bring you back some information on cost, timelines, and our action steps. So be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Harold.
Not necessarily a question, but just for clarity for the public purpose. So the plan was to open that bridge this Wednesday. But based off of caution, we're going to wait to open that until after this assessment has been completed by the DOT contractor, and we'll have more information in the next probably 3 to 6 weeks to have that conversation further about what's needed, what potential temporary or long-term fixes should be considered by the community, what the potential costs will be of those, or what work we need to do to determine those costs going forward. And we just want to be open and transparent about these decisions. I'm sure it wouldn't take much to do a Google search to read about bridge collapses, most recently in Minneapolis here a few years ago. We don't want to be a repeat of that. So out of an abundance of caution, we will continue to keep that structure closed until we have further information by experts who have looked at the facility.
And Lance, this has always been, I mean, this project has been on the radar. In fact, it's in our CIP. We just may have to possibly move it up. Is that?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. From a bridge inspection in 2023, we had seen some spalling concrete on this pier and some other issues that were on the bridge that we had seen. So we knew that a project was coming, but I think we need to potentially move this up in the process a little bit. So that's going to probably be the state's recommendation. So,
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Lance.
you're welcome.
Any further questions of Harold, City Manager, on his report? If not, we'll move on to item 4.2, and that's the City Attorney's Report. Steph?
Mayor, members of the council, I submitted a written report, and I will stand for any questions at this time.
Are there any questions of our City Attorney? Seeing no questions?
I do
Oh,
have
go ahead.
I do have one brief request outside of the report. I am working on a memo to just hand out to the council, especially for the new members, on just kind of the 30,000-foot view on different council basics. So if there's something that veteran council members, if you wish you had known when you first got into the council, if there's a question that you still have to this day, feel free to let me know and I'll try to address that in the memo. I have topics from a few references to state law, citations to the Open Records, Open Meetings Manual, frequently asked questions, decorum questions, what to do if you get a subpoena, things of that nature, all included in this memo. So if there's something specific you want, I can kind of try to broadly address that there.
Okay, seeing no questions, we will move on to item 5 on the agenda. That's our consent agenda. We have 12 items on the agenda, and I have been asked to pull 2 items, 5.2 and 5.12, for further discussion. Are there any other items that need to be pulled? Any other? Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
I'd move approval of the remaining items.
We have a motion by Mike. Second by Mark. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Blessum,
Yes.
Fuller, sorry.
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item 5.2. Recommended the city approve the following ordinances on second reading. And what are the wishes of the council?
Move we approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And Councilman Blessam, you asked to have this motion, this item pulled, so I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, so just a couple maybe new guy items to learn about here a little bit. So first, starting on the dead loop rehab survey, $24,000 to do that study. This has gone on for many, many years, right? 1969 is when this first started. I grew up in the Oak Park area, so I remember as a kid going underneath the bridge on the dead loops there. So this has been there a long time. I believe in the flood planning, this was a part of that project. It's been there all this time. I guess my question, and this is maybe for my colleagues along the days here, is this the time where we go forward and address it? Because I'd like to see this be the start of that, if that's what that is. But I'm not a fan of doing the study if it's not going to be that.
Jason, you want to come address that question for the council? I think you spoke on this last time, but maybe provide us a refresher of what this study will accomplish and next steps.
Sure. Members of the council, Alderman Blessum. So this study is basically just to kind of get the core, get all their expertise on board, to look at what they left behind from the earlier channelization project. We know that we have issues with how they operate and things of that nature. So basically, it's just, this is kind of a step one to see if there are plans that we can do to improve water quality in these. In this study, there's two main loops that were identified. The Oak Park Nubbin loops, those are going to be incorporated back into the river as part of MI4. Potentially, we're working through that. We're currently working with the Eastwood Park dead loop. So we're going to open up, and the culverts that bring water in and out of that dead loop are going to be raised so that currently they don't act like basically a skimmer. Right now, like when we open them, we can get water in, but it doesn't flush any debris or any of that stuff out. So there should be improvements in that. So this study basically is just to analyze the ones that we really can't take care of as part of the flood control project, and look for some water quality improvements potentially.
You good? Any other questions of Jason? Any further discussion?
So if
Yes,
I
Mike.
continue- Yep, if I continue, the only other one then is on the dispatch center, and I think I have this, but dispatch center, $550,000 was part of the project in 2023, which was completed. This is a final payment, and so we've got to do a budget amendment to get it available for paying.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, that is correct. This is final payment, finishing out the final construction costs of the dispatch center.
Any further discussion on the 5.2? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Blessum,
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Moving on to consent item 5.12. What are the wishes of the council?
I would move approval.
We have a motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Mike, you asked to have this pulled, so I will turn the,
Yeah, and so if we could, I'd like to just kind of get an update, because it sounds like this is a precursor to negotiations, right? It's sort of I'm reading it like a good faith payment almost. Is that accurate?
Yes, so Alderman Blessum and Mayor, City Council, this agreement for acquisition of real property interests stems from the Dog Coulee storm sewer project. And so we've retained John Workup and Swanson and Workup to negotiate temporary and permanent easements on that particular project. And so an offer has been made to this property owner that's the subject of this agreement. They have counter-offered with a number that is about 3-4 times what the city has offered in exchange for payment for those interests. And so as we are negotiating a final purchase price for that property, what this agreement would allow us to do, if they sign it, they also have to sign it as well, would allow us to continue construction on the property as planned, so we don't incur additional construction costs. And so it would reserve the issue of final payment for negotiation between the parties. And if at some point during negotiations they stall out, they stagnate, either party can ask that we proceed with an eminent domain action. And so that, if it turns out that that's the route that we need to progress, we would bring that information back to the council, and the council would consider a resolution for eminent domain.
If I can continue. And I think that gets the legal side of it. So the reason that this is coming up, I guess my understanding or my thought process on it is are we rerouting the Dog Coulee infrastructure that goes underneath there so that it substantially changes how this hotel is being impacted? Because right now, I think it goes right along, pretty close to along the line. And is it changing significantly? Is that why there's such a huge impact to them, at least in their minds?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, we are substantially changing the route of the culverts. So right now, the way that these culverts work is they come underneath 16th Street, and then they kind of shoot between the buildings where Pacific Sound is and that strip mall.
Yep.
And it angles and goes towards McDonald's. Excuse me. The reroute will have it go through the parking lot of Hotel Ravel, and then it kind of 90s around the backside of where Pacific Sound is, and then between Target and Pacific Sound, and then goes out towards where McDonald's is. So we're going a completely different direction. So we're going to impact Hotel Ravel's parking lot, and that's where we need the easement. It's basically the lowest cost solution that we've engineered. And so we're quite a ways apart on easement price, and we've come to the point now where we have to have some sort of agreement like this to try to work through that. And then to meet the timelines that we're under with the federal grant, we're in a point now where we have to move ahead.
Any other questions of Lance? Scott?
Lance, the current route that it runs now, do we have easements for that already?
Mayor Ross and Alderman Samuelson, we do, but they're encumbered with two very large metal pipes. And so we'd have to put those out of service and then try to put these very large concrete box culverts between there. And basically the risk is the current metal pipes are built right on the foundation of one of those buildings. And us as an engineering team are concerned about building that close to one of the buildings. And so by building on the backside of that building, we're able to work around some of those constraints. So that's why we need the new easements to build our new infrastructure around the existing.
So the current infrastructure, once the project's done, does that stay?
It'd be abandoned in place and be filled with like flowable concrete or sand.
Are there in some of the parking lots and stuff there, isn't there some intakes to that?
Correct. And then we'd pick those up with new storm sewers and then bring those into the new box culvert.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you. Oh, yes, Rob.
Not for Lance, but for Stephanie. The $35,000 payment, you said it's so we can continue working and we don't have construction delays. Do we anticipate delays would add up to $35,000 or more if we didn't pay this?
I would defer that to Lance Meyer and the construction project. My guess is that it probably would, given today's construction climate.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, our risk right now is because of procurement timelines for this much box culvert. We're talking almost 2,000 feet of box culvert, and you've heard some of the concerns we have about our bridge project. A lot of counties right now are going away from bridges and they're converting bridges into box culverts. So the order for box culverts right now has gone through the roof, and it's just hard to come by box culverts. So that stretches our project out over a huge period of time. And so we need a lot longer to procure all those box culverts. And so the longer we stretch this project out, we keep bumping up against this timeline that we're under to spend the federal funds that we have. So that's our impetus, if you will, to try to get this land issue resolved so we can bid our project. We can secure a good bid price, and we're not pushing our contractor up against this completion date, which then raises the contract price, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Stephanie?
That $35,000 figure that's in this agreement is what I believe is the our assessment of what it would cost to purchase the temporary and permanent easements from Ravel Hotel. So that's what our initial offer essentially is for this easement if we were to purchase it.
That's the appraised price.
The appraised price.
Yes.
And that's how these eminent domain actions work, right? I mean, both parties secure appraisals and then we review them and we make a determination depending upon what those appraisals say as to what the fair market value of that property is. And if we can't reach a conclusion on that, then we have to proceed with an eminent domain action, prove that it's for a public purpose, and then we present those appraisals to the court and they make a determination for us.
Okay.
Harold?
If I might add as well, and I might phone a friend here, Dave Lakefield, our finance director, is attending remotely as well, and he may be able to provide some more detail. But this is significantly funded with the ARPA funds that the city has, and we have a deadline, I believe, of 2025 to have those spent. Is it 2025 or 2026?
26.
26. And so construction delays jeopardizes that, which would mean that we'd have to return those millions of dollars back to the federal government, which is a significant portion of funding this project. So again, as our city engineer stated, we're kind of under the gun on a timeline here to get this done and meet the requirements and the obligations of the federal funding that's significantly a portion of making these improvements on behalf of our community.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
If seeing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Blessum,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Moving on to action items. We have 3 items on our action items list. Item 6.1, paving district 500. What are the wishes of the council? What are the wishes of the council?
Mr.
Mark,
Mayor, I move we approve the recommendation.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Rob?
So I guess I got a couple quick questions. There's 3 things that stand out in this to me as a guy that was a previous banker for 17 years. Number one, if we as a city all of a sudden start funding horizontal or infrastructure for developers and builders that don't want to fund it themselves or can't get a bank loan to fund it themselves, we're going to start going the path that Fargo and West Fargo are with all these special assessment districts, which adds to the price of the house. The other thing that stands out to me is this is a $17,000, I think that was the number I saw, $17,000 per lot assessment or paving district. We talk about affordable housing, moderate to low income housing. That isn't going to make that affordable to a lot of people that would come to town looking to buy a house. And then stretching it out over 20 years as a city. If our normal practice is 10 years, to stretch it out over 20 years to make it easier for them to pay doesn't make any sense to me either. Then thirdly, and I don't know if this is the case or not in this instance, but if the developer, individual, whoever it is, can't get a loan from the bank to do this, or a bank won't do it for them, why would the city get involved in doing this?
Mark?
I had also a question regarding the infrastructure that's there now, incomplete as it might be. Who paid for that, I guess would be about.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Janser, it was originally put in by the developer using their own funds.
Can I ask a question
ahead,
for Lance?
Harold.
So if the council takes this action tonight and we move forward with this, creating the special assessment district, all that infrastructure that Alderman Janser was just asking about would become the responsibility of the city, correct?
Yeah, so the way that this would work is this project would then become a city Minot infrastructure project. So we would contract with, in this case, Ackerman Esfold. They would become our consulting engineer. We would publicly bid a project, so it'd be a city Minot contractor under city Minot procurement rules. We would hire and manage that contractor, and it would be a city project, just like any other city Minot bid project. And at the end of the project, when it's complete, then we would take it over.
So I guess my follow-up question to that is what kind of assessment have we done and what confidence do we have that that infrastructure is still viable and usable versus needing replacement, that if the council moves forward with this and this becomes our responsibility, it's the taxpayers that are now responsible for fixing or replacing the infrastructure the developer paid for previously that's been sitting there for a number of years.
So as part of this project, there's costs that are built into the estimate to have the remaining infrastructure, so the sewer and the water, the storm sewer utilities, tested and televised. So that was already done previously and it passed inspection. But because it's been sitting there stagnant for so long, city staff wants those utilities retested to make sure they're still viable. If not, then those utilities would have to be replaced before they're put in service, and then the city would accept those again. We did look at the pavement infrastructure. Some of it can be salvaged, some of it cannot. So the infrastructure that cannot be salvaged would have to be removed and replaced, and that cost has been estimated in the engineer's report. So all of the infrastructure, when the project is said and done, would meet City Minot specifications, and then we would take that over and maintain it into forever. So now, if council does not create a district tonight, the same rules still apply, except the developer would have to do this with private financing. So before the City Minot takes over the utilities someday, we would say, all right, we want it retested. We'd want to see the testing reports to make sure it still meets City Minot specifications. The same street paving rules would still apply. They'd have to meet City Minot specs, have to be inspected full time, just like we make any other developer do before we take that over. And then we do a final inspection, and once everything meets our specs, then we would take it over. So either way that council decides tonight, the requirements are the same. It's just a different financing tool that they would use.
It's a different financing tool, but it's also the city's holding the risk if we accept it tonight versus making the developer fix it if we don't. Correct.
First, we'll go to Mark and then Mike.
Okay, further question, I guess, and I don't know if you're, Lance, if you're the right one, but, okay, so under this construct, if we do this, when does the city start getting paid back for the investment that we've made? Because is it when the build out is done and the lots are occupied and there's a homeowner there to pay the tax, or does the repayment stream for us start from the developer?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Janser, the way that this works, and there's a schedule attached to the report, is once the improvements are complete, we total up all the costs, and we present them to the Special Assessment Commission, which is a group of folks that basically certify the special assessments. Then that comes to the city council, and then you approve their certification, and then that goes to the county auditor, and then she places that on the tax roll. That all has to be done by, I think it's sometime in November of that year, and then it goes on the next year's tax bill. So whoever would own the lots at that time, whether it's the developer that still owns them, or if it's a new homeowner after they build the structure and they occupy it, whoever has the tax bill at that time would then get the bill. So in this scenario, the way that the schedule is laid out is the improvements would be constructed May through November of 2025. And so we wouldn't have costs totaled and completed until sometime end of the year, so it wouldn't meet the end of the year 25 Special Assessment Commission. So all that work would get done sometime in 2026. So the first bill wouldn't show up to the property owner until their taxes in 2027.
Continue.
So, is there any risk then that if the developer, we go ahead and do this, the developer attempts to market these lots, the housing market for whatever type of lots or houses that they're trying to do falters, and they end up with a failed project. I mean, we're still on we've made our investment, and it could get to where it's way down the road before we see any money coming back. If they're a failed LLC or whatever construct their organization is that a potential possibility?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Janser, just like anyone, if you're delinquent on your taxes or you're not making your special assessment payment, then the city doesn't collect that revenue. We still have to make our bond payment. So we're making our payment no matter what, but we're short on the collection. So
And that's what I'm getting to,
Yep.
that it's on us to fulfill our obligation.
Correct.
Regardless of what happens
Yep.
with the success or lack thereof of this kind of a project.
Mike?
Oh, okay, so a quick question first and then maybe a comment. With the developments that are going on around town right now, do we have any other special assessment districts going on, whether it's for paving or other types, or maybe the better way to put it is, when was the last time we did do one? Do you happen to know that?
A developer requested assessment district. Mr. Mayor and Alderman, bless them, I know we did a storm sewer assessment district and a couple paving districts in Northwest Minot around Ramstead School. This was back in 2013. There's been one in 2010 around southwest Minot, southeast Minot. We've had a couple, but they're pretty rare. Most of the time, just because of some of the fees and finance charges that the city puts on it, a lot of times it's more cost effective for the developer to go to private financing. They have some more flexibility and options to pick their own contractor and work through it at a more cost effective rate than to go through us.
Okay. So if I can continue, just a couple comments, I guess. Back to what Alderman Fuller was getting at. If we head down this direction, I think we're taking a little bit of a new direction. And obviously that doesn't always have to be precedent. It doesn't mean that every developer that comes wouldn't have to go that direction, but this would be a significant step in that direction. So I am concerned about that. I think that we are better off as a city having developers do this on their own with their own financing, because I think it leads to a better deal overall. They've got more skin in the game. They've got more that they're on the hook for. And so my vote on this will be no. I think that it heads us down a path towards where West Fargo and Fargo are that I don't believe is tenable for us in the future. I think there are challenges we have to development in the city, but I don't think this is the main one.
Mark?
The other, I don't disagree with what Alderman Blessam just said, and the other question I think is, this is a big project. I mean, there's a lot of square footage, a lot of lots, and some of it isn't subdivided and maybe would be eventually, but I guess I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a little more palatable if it were done in pieces and there were some success to be seen of piece one before we bite off the whole landmass there.
Thank you. Rob?
Lance, just another quick question. Do you have any idea what the developer's planning to sell the lots for, whether we do this or not?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, I do not.
Okay. Because I mean, if he's selling lots for $50,000 to $70,000, and then we're throwing a $17,000 special assessment district on there, that's pretty unattainable for a lot of people to buy a lot, which, to your point, Mark, pushes us farther and farther down the road before we see any repayment on it. So, I think that's it. Thanks.
Any other?
Thank
Lisa?
you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a lot of respect for you, Lance, and your department, and I know that you did your homework for this project. What made you give us the recommendation to move forward with this? When you were weighing it all out, how did you determine that you would give a recommendation for it?
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Olson, really what it comes down to is when someone presents a paving district to us, we make sure that it meets our ordinances, it meets state law, and that the project's feasible to construct. And really after that, as long as it meets those check marks, it becomes a political decision after that. So in this case, it met all those, and it's technically feasible to construct. It's not some wild project that we feel wouldn't be unnecessary or something like that. So really at this point, it's in front of you because if you wanted to do it, it would be feasible to do. So it really becomes a political decision.
Thank you.
Mike?
So just one last thing to add from the law. One of the things I looked up was to make sure I understood the way that Century Code is actually written. And it's important to note that it says municipalities may introduce special assessment districts. It doesn't say that they are required to. It doesn't say that they shall. And so this is a decision that this body makes, and it's one that we should take with the preponderance of all the different evidence that's brought before us, whether it's Lance's side, which you just talked about, but also the history of what we know, both with the land, with the developer, everything else there, but also with that big picture focus on where do we want to be in terms of all the other developers around our area and where we're headed there.
Mark?
Maybe one more question, just for sort of knowledge. Does anybody know offhand roughly how many developable lots are available in town right now? Anybody have any idea about that?
Mr. Billingsley might know how many buildable lots there are. Do you have a number? Or
Mr.
Mr. Community
Billingsley's
Development
coming up.
Director?
I mean, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I know we've had some incentivization of trying to get some of these plots of land that were, started as developments and then sort of stalled out at some point. We're trying to get incentives to build houses on them. If, with all of the things that it looks like are in play in this one, I don't think we want to create more of that. So, Brian.
Brian.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Janser, we have approximately 300 buildable lots in our community right now. And the total number of lots that are not shovel-ready, that need the infrastructure that Lance is proposing, that number hovers around 1,200 or 1,300. And those are for single-family developments. Okay.
That 12 and 1,300 would include the lots here at this development
Yes.
as well, correct? If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, well, go ahead. Go ahead, Harold.
No, we can let Mr. Samus.
Go ahead, Scott.
I guess my thought on this is I think that we're going to an area where we're gonna have to probably explain to developers why we don't do this very often, and now we're gonna start. And I would just note that what Alderman Janser was saying about a smaller area of this, if you blow up that map and you look at it, it is a smaller area of a development out there. So I can't support this.
Harold?
So to kind of scale out a little bit and bigger picture, and maybe have this conversation a little bit more away from this project specifically, we had a recent housing study that talked about our housing needs within our community. And ultimately what we're trying to figure out is how to balance, how to solve the supply-demand issue in a way that creates affordable living within our community. And this is an issue that it's being struggled with across the country. One of the challenges that comes back in some of the bigger picture element is there's a cost to installing infrastructure, right? Minot has had the history of doing exactly what's been discussed tonight, that the developer be responsible for paying for all that, installing all that, meeting all the city specifications, and then when it's all done, turn it all over and give it to the city where we take responsibility for maintenance and operation of that infrastructure. That is even before the inflation impacts here over the last few years, that was becoming more and more difficult for developers to do. So I agree that, not adding $17,000 to a lot in the special assessment is not going to help with affordability, but there is a cost to putting that infrastructure in and somebody has to pay for it. It's becoming more and more apparent that the developers aren't willing to pay for that, which is why we're not having a lot of single-family residential permits being pulled to construct right now. And in fact, most of our developers, more and more, aren't even wanting to go through the platting process to create buildable lots within communities, not just Minot, but communities throughout the country, due to the fact that the cost that they hold in doing that is becoming too much. They want to focus on just acquiring a single property that already has all the infrastructure in, and they can focus on building the house. One of the recommendations that came out of our study, which is consistent with what I've seen in the states, in the areas that I've seen try to tackle this problem, is the cities take on more of the financial burden of building and installing the infrastructure. So really the only way to get that $17,000 number down for the property owner is the city agrees to pay for some portion of that. And I agree that that merits some conversation by the council. And if that is a direction that you want to go, I would recommend that the council, working with staff, develop some sort of policy that sets the ground rules for that so that we can maintain consistency through that. In addition to figuring out how we're going to pay for that. Because right now, we're getting ready to go in the budget process. I can tell you right now, we're not sitting on millions of dollars that we can invest in building this infrastructure for future citizens of our community. So we have to identify that. It's all a worthwhile conversation. I don't know that I have the answers, and I'm not recommending this evening that the city begin paying for this infrastructure. What I'm saying is that is a common conversation for communities across the country. Some are more progressive and aggressive than others. Minot traditionally has not been. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that that's a valid conversation to have that merits that. And I would encourage the council to probably have that conversation before you take approvals such as this one this evening, so that we can make sure that there's a policy in place, the rules are known, the developers know what they need to do and what they can expect, so that we as a city can implement that consistently across the board in the future. I also have some concerns with regards to the current status of the infrastructure. And I would at least recommend, if the council is considering doing this tonight, that maybe there should be some more due diligence on that before we accept full financial responsibility of that going forward.
Thank you, Harold. Rob?
Just in response a little bit to Harold's statement there, have we as a city or anybody within the city departments looked at, investigated the financial condition of the applicant and or the project itself? Have we looked at that at all? Because I know there's been some stuff in the past. This project started in what, 16, 17, and so we're at a 8-year non-performance issue on it already. I mean, is this really what we want to look at after we just got done having issues with Epic companies and everything else that's going on? Just my thoughts.
I guess in response to that, no, we have not done any financial due diligence. Typically with these types of special assessment districts, I don't know that it's traditionally had the same financial scrutiny as we would with like a TIF or something like that. With the M building downtown, we did have CPM do a financial analysis of that to verify the finances of the company, that the numbers made sense, and that the project would not move forward without the TIF incentive to make it work. So we did have the due diligence done on that, but on this project specifically with this developer, no, we haven't, and I don't know that we've traditionally done that with special assessment districts.
Okay, just a couple of points of clarification. I don't know if you know, Mike, that there is a special assessment map on the city website that points it out. That'll give you a good view of how very little special assessing that we do. But going back to the original motion, part of that motion, Mark, you made the motion. Are you making a motion on either a 20-year special assessment or a 10-year?
Well, I guess based on the amount, I would include 20 years.
And so would that be okay with the second? So we'll add that to the recommendation. The motion on the floor is for a 20-year special assessment district. Go ahead, Mark.
If, since I made the motion, I think it's fair to point out that, having looked at this and knowing what we know at this point, I'm going to vote against my own motion.
Before we get to the roll, I think, I think Harold mentioned, had a good point. I don't think, and is the developer here tonight? Okay. I don't think that the city should be holding the whole bag on this one. I think there could be there could be a meet in the middle type or a partial on this one. So I think that, for future use and to help on making some future decisions. So I will be voting against this as well. So if there is nothing further, please call the roll.
Janser,
No.
Olson,
No.
Ross,
Nope.
Samuelson,
No.
Blessam,
No.
Fuller.
No.
Motion fails.
Motion fails. Moving on to item 6.2, purchase of property, Lot 5, Kemper Edition. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Lisa. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so this item, I guess, starts us a little bit down the path of where our campaign ended off and where my time on the council at least starts up. In my mind, buying land because it's possible we could have to grow at some point in the future, and this happens to be attached to the Public Works current area, doesn't pass muster for meeting the needs of the city. I think the path that we head down there is almost more of an investment path as opposed to a service path for our citizens. And so I think that, you know, while this is a unique opportunity because it is adjacent, before we even get into how much it is and how much per acre and all the different things that go with it, I think as a philosophical question, we have to ask ourselves, where are we headed as a city, and do we speculatively grab onto land like a developer might? I'm not going to be a part of that. That's not a direction that I'll be interested in taking. It's not to say that I won't consider every request that comes in front of us uniquely, but this allows me to fulfill a little bit of what my thought process is as I come onto the council, and that's certainly not to sort of add to the kingdom. My philosophy is going to be, let's do great things with what we've got.
Any further discussion? Rob?
I just had a quick couple questions, and I don't know, maybe this is for Lance more than anybody, but do we have an idea?
Jason?
Or Jason, sorry. Jason, I just calculating this out real quick. It sounds like we're going to pay about, if we were to buy this, $2.88 a square foot. Is that fair price right now in Minot for raw land?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Fuller, yeah, I think we talked with the city assessor, and it's hard to find, it was difficult to find comparables to this. There isn't a lot of blank M1 zoned property that's sold really within the city, but it's been in line with what some other acquisitions have gone for.
Okay. Any idea if we do purchase it, what it would cost us to develop it?
I guess develop for
whatever we're going to use it for in the future. I mean, there's obviously a plan if we're looking to buy it, right?
At this point, basically it'll be for like equipment storage and some of our laydown area for storm sewer pipes and things of that nature. There have been quite a few inquiries. I've understood that there are people that would like to buy the Burdick frontage. So there would be a possibility that we could subdivide and sell some off. You know, so I think at this point, we don't have any grand master plans yet, but that would be the next step.
Okay. Thank you.
Scott?
So you don't see any immediate, what would you say the time frame would be for the use of this property?
I mean, Mayor Ross, Alderman Samuelson, so basically we would take possession of it relatively quickly, and then we would, you know, tear down the fence between their property and our property, and we would kind of spread some of our stuff out. I mean, right now we could use some laydown area. Like I said, we have a ton of storm sewer pipe and some of our equipment. So as far as you know, there's still a traffic building, you know, in limbo, you know, so we need to have some of those discussions to figure out kind of what some of the future are, some of these other pieces of infrastructure before we can really kind of put all of it together and master plan.
All right, thank you.
Mike?
So a question, Jason, you might be able to, or maybe we might need Dave or Harold. If I remember right, we would be using sewer and water infrastructure funds to transfer to do this. Is that right?
That is correct. Cash reserves.
Yep. So theoretically, $920,000 would come out of whatever type of reserve would come through the general fund and be used for the purchase. I guess I'm at a point right now, if we've got $921,000 or $920,000 around, this may not be my first choice for use. I mean, I realize that we've got reserves all over the place as a city right now, but right now, the people through the satisfaction survey, I believe through the election, are saying, give us property tax relief and work on our roads. If this proposal was divide 920,000 in half and give half of it back in property tax relief and half of it to fixing roads, I'd be yes on it right now. I think that's where we're at. The fact that we have the money makes this really attractive for some people.
Just, if I may, just for clarity, so this would be paid for out of our reserves from our enterprise funds. We're limited on how much we can transfer between an enterprise fund to the general fund. So it won't transfer to the general fund. The purchase will be made directly out of the enterprise funds because it's meeting an enterprise need and an enterprise function. So the money that we're allocating, or that's for consideration by the council tonight, would not be usable to fix roads or relieve property tax. Where it will feel the impact potentially would be in water and sewer rates for the future, right? And so, and if I can add a little bit to Mr. Sorensen's discussions of the potential needs. First and foremost, the city wasn't looking for it. I think there were some issues with the property owner that it came time that they were looking to sell off this land, and they approached the city due to its proximity to our facilities of whether or not we were interested in purchasing it. Due to the fact that we've added several buildings out there at our facilities, moving some of the big storage buildings and those kinds of things out of the flood zone that we've repurposed into our uses over there, that ate up a lot of our lay-down property at our existing facility. And it's getting a little tight, and we're running out of room to lay down all that land. We also have some needs with our police impound lot, that it may potentially need some new space or something done differently to address some issues that we have there. And this property happens to provide an opportunity. One of the few things that we can create in our community is more land, and having it within proximity of our facility. We can't go make our lot bigger without buying property from someone else. Right now it's vacant. In 5 years, if we determine we have a need for it, there's a potential that someone's built a property on it, a building, and that escalates the price even further. So I think staff is doing its due diligence that this is an opportunity for consideration. Now is a great opportunity that if we feel we need it in the future, now is probably an opportune time to do that. But I believe staff will be supportive of the decision of the council if you deem that this is not the proper time to make that investment. But that, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball for what the future holds. But if we have need for that later, we're either going to have to continue to fracture our public works facilities throughout the community instead of having them consolidated into one location, or we'll have to pay whatever the market price is for property at that point in the future, assuming that there's a willing seller of property that meets our needs.
So Lance, you know, when we were on the budget tours, we took a look at the traffic building over there behind Knockback. What's the timeline? Where are they going? What's the timeline on that with flood control, and when do we have to find a place for them?
Mr. Mayor, there's a contract out right now for the demolition of that building. That's slated to happen in about mid-July. And so our traffic staff will be moving over to the Public Works Department here about that time. So our staff will be joining us in the Public Works building. We'll have them kind of spread out where the city assessor's office used to be. That's right outside where the building inspectors sit. We're hoping that's a temporary solution for a while, because that chews up a lot of the space where that staff would hope to expand someday in the future. And then the equipment will get kind of scattered back around the facility where we have some room. That's our plan at this point until we develop a further solution.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments, any further discussion? Lisa?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this, and while I realize that $920,000 is a lot of money and could, potentially be used for something else, I also know that the price of land only increases, it never decreases. And with the proximity to the Public Works Department, I think that the investment makes sense, and I will be supporting the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Seeing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
No.
Lessem,
No.
Fuller,
No.
Dancer.
Yes.
Motion fails for a lack of a majority. Moving on to item 6.3, the accounts receivable update, and I believe we do we have Finance Director Lakefield connected in with us?
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Dave, the mic is yours.
All right, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we brought this update to the policy to the last council meeting, and there were some proposed changes that the council wanted to see made. So we have gone back and made those updates that they requested. I think it's laid out in the memo. The one exception to that was the request was to have all write-offs come to the city council for approval. I think in our opinion, that isn't practical or feasible. In most cases, these are smaller dollar amounts, and if there are larger dollar amounts that are in question, generally it's part of a contract or a lease or some other type of legal document where the city would be undertaking legal action to recover those funds. So this policy, as we see it, is pertaining more to our everyday transactions that we see. And if we are not able to collect these receivables, we aren't allowed to keep them on our books into perpetuity either. So we tried to make this as practical as possible and still be transparent and have a process that requires, has some controls built into it so that nobody can manipulate the system. And this is where we landed with this.
Thank you, Dave. Before we get to questions, we do need a motion to continue discussion. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Lisa. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Scott. Okay. Any questions of, or discussion? Go ahead, Rob.
Just a couple quick questions for Dave. Number one, is there a limit or a procedure already in place where you bring a certain dollar amount that gets written off to city council? And two, how many write-offs did we have as a city last year? Just rough numbers. I'm not talking dollar figure, but how many of these actually came up?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Fuller, I don't have the number of write-offs that we have done in the last year off the top of my head. Right now, we don't have a formal policy that requires it to come back to the council for approval. Folks in my department are the ones that go through the process to do the write-offs. And I can certainly get the information on how many are done. I would say the majority of the write-offs that are done are typically because it's a processing error or something that was done by mistake, so the transaction needs to be reversed.
Can I continue?
Continue.
Thank you. Dave, one other thing, you had said in there that the $500 limit, all of these coming to you guys seems a little bit arduous or maybe a lot of work for you guys. I mean, I look at it like micromanaging. Now, is there a different level we can speak of to change it so it isn't arduous and micromanaging of you guys?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Fuller, I guess that's up to the council. Like I said earlier, typically if we have something that is significant, it's part of a formal agreement like a contract or a lease, which would require council action to approve whatever legal action would be required as a result of that. So those items would be coming to council as a result of the legal action and not necessarily just the write-off.
Okay, thank you.
Mike.
I guess I had the same questions about the number and how many these would be. My assumption is it's not a lot. I guess in the interest of that, I guess I'd like to offer an amendment to what's been presented. to try to get us to where the staff is taking care of almost all of this, if at all possible. And so the amendment that I'd like to look at is that 0 to 1,000, we need the department head and the finance director to approve. 1,000 to 2,500, Harold, I think you should see those. And then anything above 2,500, maybe the council takes a look. And my hope with that is that council might see one every
Okay,
2 years.
Why don't we get a second first, and we can continue
I'll second.
discussion. So we have an amendment and a second, so continue, Mike.
Yeah.
My apologies.
So again, my point here is I think we're all probably in agreement that we don't want to micromanage this for staff. They can take care of all of this. I like the 2 sets of eyes at all times, which is one of the main reasons I wanted that. And maybe the 2,500 isn't even high enough. Maybe it's even higher where we would ever see it. My hope would be we might see one every couple years. But I'd love to hear what you have to say, Harold, because I don't know if the numbers could adjust that a little.
Before you jump in, Harold, just so clarification, you're saying $0 to $1,000 department head and finance director.
Yep.
1,000 to 2,500 would be department head, finance director, and city manager.
Yep.
And then 2,500 and above, it would be all 3 plus the council.
Sure.
Okay. Harold.
I guess in response, I mean, I understand what the council's trying to do here. I guess I would want some examples from our finance staff of what would be write-offs above 2,500 and what are those circumstances, and why they feel that may or may not be necessary to bring to council. I mean, I don't know that we're writing off hundreds of thousands of dollars on a frequent basis, but I know that sometimes it's a balance between, yeah, we'd like to get the money, but by the time you pay a collection agency to go get it, you're really not getting that much, and it's more advantageous to write it off than not. But most of those are probably going to be smaller amounts, but those could get up into the thousands of dollars, but I'm not sure how frequently that occurs, and maybe Dave can respond more appropriately to that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but a likely scenario would be something that maybe it's an accident claim where somebody has damaged some city property, or restitution through the court system, where it's just not likely that we're going to collect that. We go through a series of processes to try and follow up on that. Like Mr. Stewart said, if we do turn it over to the collection agency, generally we would receive less than half if they are successful. But the process we go through to turn it over to the collection agency is to write off that receivable. So that would require us to go through the process. In this case, if it's over $2,500, which is completely fine. The intent behind updating this policy was more to go through and formalize the actions that departments take, and my department takes, leading up to the point of writing off the receivable, more so than the actual write-off itself.
Harold.
My only point to make with regards to the amendment to the motion is currently the policy, and I think this is consistent with our current policy as well, is the department heads or the department directors have the ability to approve write-offs up to $500,000, whereas your motion now requires approval of the finance director as well. So we're adding another layer into that process that doesn't currently exist. Again, not that I'm necessarily opposed to that, but I understand what you're trying to get to, and I do believe that there is probably some point in where we draw that threshold at is what's hard to determine, is what write-off is significant enough that we need to bring back. So if I give an example, like we recently had some of our traffic signals at Broadway and Burdick hit. We file a claim against the insurance company for hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're lucky if I think most insurance companies now have a cap of $25,000 payout in an accident. So we may be due $400,000 to replace that, but the most we're going to get from the insurance agency is $25,000. And that's one of those situations where staff's like, there's no chance that we're gonna recoup any of this. I mean, we can bring it to council, but the council's not gonna have any options or alternatives either to go get that additional $375,000. And so we process that as staff as, you know, we find ways to pay for it within our budget, and that basically gets written off. Now, I could understand in a case where, you know, somebody's not paying their bill, let's say it's a sewer bill or a trash bill at the landfill or something like that, and they've accumulated a lot of money, and then that's something you should probably be aware of if they're not paying their bills, and we can talk about other things, changes in policy that we want to do to make sure it doesn't accumulate to that level. But there's some things that are just out of our control that there's really no alternatives for the city to address that, and we just have to accept that and write it off.
Mike?
If I can continue, I agree, and I think the main thing that I'm going for two things with the amendment. Number one is the two sets of eyes, because I don't like a write-off without anybody else knowing. I think that, I like that. As far as the amounts go, I'm open to whatever would make sense for staff, because that, once we do that, that fulfills that side. And then on the insurance thing that you're mentioning, I mean, that's a really good example. I think for me, looking at it from up here, I'd be more than happy if that was in your memo. That, hey, we had the Burdick and Broadway thing, there's a bullet point that said we wrote off this amount. Because to me, that makes sense, or it could be a consent item. I mean, I think we want to get at what the intent of where we're going for here, and that's what my amendment was meant to bring, just those couple comments, or those couple concepts.
Okay. We have an amendment and a second to write off anything from 0 to 1,000 needs a department head and finance director. From 1,000 to 2,500 needs department head, finance director, city manager. And then anything over 2,500 needs department head, finance director, city manager, and council approval. That's the amendment to the main motion, and there's a second. There's no further discussion. Please call the roll.
Lessem,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Cancer,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Okay, now we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded and amended. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Lessem,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item item 7 on the agenda, that's personal appearances. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to come and address the council. Now is your time to address the council. I would ask out of respect for others who wish to speak to keep your comments to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Travis Zablotny, 1412 12th Street, Southwest Minot. As y'all know, we had an election June 11th. The people of Minot, the residents of Minot, spoke loud and clear. Congratulations to the 3 new elected councilmen. I think the message that was loud and clear was that the citizens of Minot are looking for change. They're looking for change from this body in terms of how they utilize the resources and the taxes that we pay as citizens. They're looking for change in regards to what our government does, what our government thinks it should do. Get back to what it needs to do and not what it thinks it needs to do. I think that ultimately we need to take a strong look at that. And I was hoping the second to the last vote of the evening would have ended up differently than it did. I think that is a perfect example as to why 3 new councilmen were elected. I don't believe the citizens of Minot would agree with you paying for too much, or paying for land that was overpriced for no apparent reason other than it will be convenient to have it. It was a poor decision based on the value, number one, and number 2, we don't need it. I've advocated for a long time as we grow as a city, when we add buildings, the one we're in presently, and we don't get rid of the buildings we had, and we add acreage, we add employees. When we add employees, we grow government. It's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for growth in government. We're looking for consolidation and the government to get back to doing what it needs to do. I think there needs to be a moratorium on any more real property acquisitions by the city. We need to start looking at why we have near $1 million in our reserves that we can just make these kind of purchases. And we've done it over and over the last number of years. We just miraculously come up with these millions of dollars that we can put over to this project and over to that project, and we didn't even budget for some of these things. We just find them out of our reserves. Well, I think I understand where that money comes from, and I hope that there'll be changes going forward. So again, I wasn't gonna speak tonight, and if that vote would have come out differently, I would have understood that the incumbents of this council and the staff and all the rest, and I understand you don't vote, but the city staff brought these recommendations to this council to vote on. I don't think they understood. I don't think those of you that weren't elected apparently do not understand what it is the people are asking for on the June 11th election. And I would hope that as we move forward over the next number of years that you figure that out. Because if that doesn't get figured out, there will be another election. Thank you.
Go ahead, Harold, did you get a response?
Just to be clear on the motion, that motion failed. So as I understand the direction of the action of the council tonight is the city is not proceeding with the purchase of that property. So I just wanted to make that clear publicly that that motion failed. Staff and the city is not moving forward with the purchase of that property at this time.
Sir.
Good evening. My name's Larry Lemon. I've got a property that's built right behind the roundabout on 13th. And potentially, I'm here to voice my opinion. Seems to the speed limit on that roundabout at 25 is only a suggestion. Nobody does 25 on that road. There are a few. I understand that it was built to effectively move traffic more efficiently, and then the four-way stop did. My personal property has been damaged 2 times, and my neighbor to the north has also been damaged. Also, for someone walking in the area of the roundabout or playing in our backyards is catastrophic. Also, there's no pedestrian lights for kids to come from the school to even cross that thing. It's dangerous to cross. I built this house thinking it would be safe in the middle of the city. A concern of mine would be when I go to sell, taking some kind of reduction of value because of the yearly damage caused by the roundabout. Yeah, I've lived there 4 years, it's 50%. I've had 2 damaged claims. I'd like to see guardrails, speed bumps, or boulders placed before someone gets critically hurt or death. I'm just going to say thank you. We can find, hopefully you guys can find results to make this thing work before you go on to do other roundabouts. I thank you.
Thank you. Continuing on with item 7, personal appearances. Now is your opportunity to come forward to address the council.
Good evening, Mayor Ross, members of the council. My name is Aaron Moss. I speak tonight on behalf of the North Dakota Fraternal Order of Police, Sarah Valley Regional Lodge Number 7. Just wanted to very briefly say congratulations to the new aldermen that were seated tonight, and to say thank you to the alderman and alderwoman who left. We've historically had a very professional and courteous relationship with City Council, and we hope to consider that in the continue that in the future with the newly elected folks that are here tonight, and as well as the folks that remained from before. And like I said, I'd keep it brief, and those are my comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, if anybody wishes to address the council, now is your opportunity. Seeing none, we will move on to item number 8 on the agenda. That's miscellaneous and discussion items. Are there any items to be brought forward by Lisa?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so this will piggyback off of the action that we took in the comments from Mr. Zablotny. On our vote that had a tie, the motion failed due to a tie. And so if the council were to reconsider that vote, what would the action be if there is not really an affirming side when it's a tie? And I'm very cognizant of the fact that we're missing one of our aldermen tonight, so the outcome would have been different, or could have been different, I guess I should say. And so is there a way to reconsider that, or is the motion just dead in the water?
Go ahead.
So, section 2.31 has a city council's rules of order, and section A9 of that has our reconsideration motion. I can plug in the dais here if our PIO would like to share my screen, and I can kind of highlight that so you can visually see that as well. Let me see if I can make that bigger for everyone. Okay, so after the decision on any question, any member of the city council that voted with the majority on the question, or on either side of the question if there was no majority. So either side of the question, no majority in this particular situation, can move for a reconsideration of the vote at the same or the next succeeding meeting without regard to whether either meeting is a regular or special meeting. Then it has some language in here about if it's mentioned unambiguously in a call for a special meeting, it has to be as many members present and voting at the special meeting as there were on the original vote. But this meeting, next succeeding meeting, once the motion for reconsideration has once been acted on, no other motion for a reconsideration shall be made without unanimous consent. So either side can vote to revisit the question at this meeting or the next succeeding meeting.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
Welcome.
Any other items to be brought up for discussion? Seeing none, let's move on to item 9 on the agenda, and that's adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Good meeting.